They're going to provide translation instructions for today's meeting. Thank you.
Hola, muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a todos a nuestro panel de aplicación de la ley y esta versión para escuchar las historias de la comunidad. Y le pasamos la palabra a Lía y a Nicola para ver las instrucciones para acceder a la interpretación. Entonces, hola, muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Lía. Estoy aquí con mi compañera Nicola y vamos a ser sus intérpretes entre inglés y español esta tarde.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Leah, and I'm here with my co-interpreter, Nicola, and we will be your interpreters for the event between English and Spanish this afternoon.
Y para facilitar la interpretación, vamos a usar la herramienta de interpretación de Zoom, que ya está activada.
In order to help out with interpreting, we will be using the Zoom interpretation tool, which is already turned on or activated.
Y esta herramienta es para cualquier persona que no se sienta 100% cómoda en los dos idiomas, inglés y español. Por favor, van a escoger su idioma preferido y van a quedar allí en el canal por toda la reunión.
This tool is for you to use if you do not feel 100% comfortable between English and Spanish. So please select your preferred language channel and stay on it for the duration of the meeting.
Y si usted es bilingüe, o sea, 100% cómodo en los dos idiomas, entonces puede dejar la interpretación apagada.
And if you are bilingual, that is, if you feel 100% comfortable in both languages, you can feel free to not turn on the function or leave it off for the duration of the meeting.
Y entonces, para acceder, si nos acompaña por computadora, va a haber un icono de un mapa mundi en la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom. Ahí dice, debajo de este icono, dice interpretación. Ahí le da clic y puede escoger inglés o español.
If you are joining us on a computer, what you'll see is a globe icon on the bottom right of your screen. It will say Zoom language interpretation or just language interpretation. You can click on that, select your preferred channel, and that should start the function.
Y si nos acompaña por tableta o teléfono inteligente, es diferente. Hay que presionar suavemente la pantalla. Va a aparecer opciones de botones, uno que tiene 3 puntitos, dice más o more, ahí le da clic, aparece otro menú, va a escoger interpretación de idiomas o language interpretation, luego selecciona su canal preferido, español o inglés, y luego hay que presionar en done o finalizar.
You are joining us via smartphone or tablet. The process is a little bit different. What you're going to have to do is gently tap your screen. You will see a menu pop up on the bottom of your application. There should be a button with 3 dots on the far right that says more. You can click on this. You'll see another menu pop up that says several options, among them language interpretation. You will click on that and then select your preferred language channel, either English or Spanish, and then click done or finalize.
Si tiene cualquier problema, por favor nos avisa en la casilla de chat. Por favor no sufra en silencio, si no puede escuchar a la interpretación en algún momento durante la reunión o ahora si no puede encontrar los botoncitos, entonces nos avisan en el chat y le podemos atender.
And if you're having any issues at all, please don't suffer in silence. You can message us through the chat. Either if you are having issues hearing the interpreter or if you are having issues right now locating the appropriate Zoom interpreting functions or the buttons options that we presented.
Y entonces ahora vamos a activar la interpretación simultánea. So we are now going to switch and activate the simultaneous interpreting. My partner will connect to the Spanish channel, English channel. Y voy a seguir en español. Y unas notas finales, la comunicación equitativa es una responsabilidad compartida y les vamos a dar algunas pautas, no solamente para beneficio de los intérpretes, sino para todas las personas que están aquí escuchando y queriendo participar. Y ahora, si está Si no entiende español, entonces debe de estar en el canal de inglés y debe de estar escuchando a la intérprete Nicola. Entonces, estas pautas, por favor, mantenga apagado el micrófono cuando no hable y por favor hable claro y fuerte al dispositivo o al micrófono. Y también se les pide que hable a un paso moderado y no se olvide de respirar entre sus ideas. Si lee su texto, por favor, esté consciente de que este ritmo de leer un texto es mucho más rápido de cuando hablamos. Entonces, de nuevo, les pedimos que tomen pausas cuando lee un texto. Finalmente, si necesitamos que reduzca la velocidad o si no podemos oír bien, se lo vamos a comunicar o en la casilla de chat o también es posible que interrumpamos la reunión para poder pedir que reduzca la velocidad. Nada más, muchísimas gracias por tenernos aquí en este espacio y le doy ahora la palabra a Robina y vamos a comenzar la reunión. Gracias.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Leah and Nicola, and welcome everyone. My name is Rabina Sewell, and I'm the Executive Director of California Safe Schools. And I'm also the co-host, along with Cynthia Babbage, of the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network's 7th Annual Environmental Enforcement Symposium. We'd like to take a quick minute to thank our generous sponsors, Earth Justice, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, the Office of the Los Angeles City Attorney, Honorable LA County Supervisors, Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, Supervisor Hilda Solis, and Supervisor Janice Hahn, and a very special thank you to the California Air Resource Board for their outstanding staff and technical support for all of our symposiums. We also want to take a moment to thank the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network's planning team, Jessica Brown and Rosella Borelli from the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, Mandy Bain from the Los Angeles County Department of Health, Manuel Garcia and Christopher Curtis of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, Crystal Love Lazard, Brian Atenci, and Deldi Reyes from the California Air Resources Board, Joe Liu from Coalition for Clean Air, Cynthia Babbage, Florence Garibian from the Del Amo Action Committee, Jennifer Malone from Los Angeles County General Counsel, Kristen McKinley from the California Environmental Protection Agency, Maria Salinas from Cal Recycle, Martha Sanchez from the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, Susana Lagudis from the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board, and Stephanie Lewis from the Department of Toxic Substances Control and our organization, California Safe Schools. The Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network was formed by frontline environmental justice communities and advocates more than 16 years ago. We've been meeting monthly since then to mentor and to help each other with issues in common, as well as ones specific to the communities we work with. We've collaborated on toxic tours, on ground truthing projects, rulemaking with many different agencies, policy and legislative issues, as well as these EJ enforcement symposiums. The symposiums were created to bring regulators and the communities together to share the challenges that environmental justice communities face and to better understand the responsibility of each of the agencies who enforce environmental laws. Previously, as many of you know, our symposiums were held in person at the California Endowment, but due to the pandemic, we've shifted to this virtual platform, and we want to thank all of you for your enthusiastic response to all of our presentations this year. Our attendees today, who number well over 100, represent cities throughout California and way beyond, and they include parents, students, educators, K-12 and university representatives, and their classrooms, union representatives, environmental justice advocacy groups, and members of the public, along with honorable elected officials representing local, state, and federal government. There are also today with us many regulatory and enforcement agencies whose responsibilities include protecting public health, our water, our air, and reducing toxic emissions. We thank you all for joining us. We encourage you to feel free to ask questions and share ideas, because when we can all work together toward a common goal with trust and respect, great things can and they do happen. It is now my honor to introduce today's moderator, Deldi Reyes. She works with the California Air Resources Board, and Deldi's vast knowledge and dedication and respectful interactions with environmental justice organizations, members of the public and elected officials in California, and again, broadly, for decades, have made our world a much better place today, and not just for today, but for future generations. So we thank you so much, Deldi, and we're turning it now over to you and your exceptional panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabina. Such a pleasure to be here with you and Cynthia Babbage, other members of the LAEJ network, all of you, the participants who have come together today as a result of Rabina and Cynthia's leadership and the committee that helped design the symposium. And I do want to just say that when I moved to California years and years ago, it was working with Rabina and with Jane and with Cynthia very early in my tenure at US EPA Region 9 that really helped me learn some of the issues that are so central to environmental justice in Southern California and throughout the state. So I just want to lift that up, because it's in that spirit of shared learning that we have seen the symposiums really evolve and keep up with the needs that we have as regulators and that you have as community members to have spaces like this, especially these days when things can seem so polarized, that we can, create dialogue with each other to get to problem solving. So on that note, I really want to highlight and turn our attention to our, as Rabina said, our amazing, exceptional panelists. I'm going to offer a brief intro for each of our panelists, and then they will each have some time to share their stories. It's very, very appropriate that we conclude the symposium this year with a focus on community voice and community challenges and successes. That is the purpose of the panel today. So I want to start with Rebecca Overmyer-Velazquez. Rebecca is the coordinator of the Clean Air Coalition of North Whittier and Avocado Heights. This is a grassroots environmental justice organization that represents unincorporated communities in Southeast LA County. It had its beginning in 2006 in the fight against an intermodal trash facility in the community, and it has grown since then to become an official nonprofit organization focused on protecting the health of families and the environment. A major focus of the work right now that this organization does is the Quemetco lead smelter in the City of Industry, which is a major source of toxic emissions in LA County since 1959. And we will hear from Rebecca about the need for this facility to be shut down and the need for the site and the neighborhoods to be cleaned up. I also want to introduce Felipe Aguirre, our second panelist. I also met Felipe years ago when I moved to California, and have fond memories of working with him much earlier in my career. He is the director of Comité Pro Uno Maywood and has served as mayor and council member of the city of Maywood for almost a decade. He is a member of the LA County Democratic Central Committee and a member of the Southern California AQMD Local Government Committee since 2007. Felipe studied economics and geography at the University of Illinois in Chicago. He has a labor studies degree from the Los Angeles Trade Technical College and studied law for a year at the People's College of Law in Los Angeles. He has served Comité Pro Uno since 1997 and has a range of experience as an immigration paralegal with a variety of public interest organizations, including organizing workshops for the Amnesty Program and organizing and providing citizenship seminars. We look forward, Felipe, to hearing more from you and your perspective. We also are very excited to have Maria Mejia with us today on our panel. Maria is an attorney practicing primarily on the California Environmental Quality Act and land use. Maria acquired her experience regarding CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, when she was a Shadow Hills resident and before becoming an attorney. Ms. Mejia represented herself during the City of Los Angeles administrative proceedings, requesting that the city and project developers comply with CEQA, among other things. And in 2005, Ms. Mejia represented herself successfully before the California Court of Appeal Second District and obtained a ruling setting aside the city's project approval and requiring that an environmental impact report be prepared. So you will hear more from Maria about the impact of this key ruling, which came about through a published opinion of the Court of Appeal, Mejia versus City of Los Angeles, 2005. This opinion has been used as a legal precedent in many other cases. Ms. Mejia earned her bachelor's degree from the University of California at San Diego with a major in political science and minors in Spanish literature and Latin American studies. Ms. Mejia was admitted to the California State Bar in September of 2006, and she earned her Juris Doctor, JD, from the Southwestern University School of Law in Los Angeles. And again, she practices primarily in the areas of environmental law and land use law. We're also so excited to hear from two generations of the Medina family. We will hear from Cynthia Medina, who along with Cynthia Babbage is the co-director of the Del Amo Action Committee. Cynthia Medina has lived in the Del Amo community for 41 years, where she has raised 4 children and 2 grandchildren. And she also cares for her mother, who lives in a home behind their family residence. Serious concerns began years ago for Cynthia and her family when she and her husband began to notice unfamiliar family illnesses were developing. They also saw at the same time that baby chicks that they kept as pets were consistently being born deformed. And soon after, her family began to note that there was a relationship between the environment and the health of their family and other families in the community. You will hear more from Cynthia and her granddaughter, Savannah, about their investigations, which revealed that the area was contaminated and impacting the health of residents. This began a long journey for them as they tried to get answers. And you'll again hear more from that challenge. This led to Cynthia working for many years with the Parent-Teacher Association in several important roles. She has served as the co-director of the Del Amo Action Committee for over 25 years. That is such a significant investment for her life and to the benefit of her community. It's meant the shedding of a lot of tears, but because she is a proud mother to her children and grandchildren, youth in the community, she's been married to her husband, Frank, for 46 years. And she knows that there's a great deal of work to do to protect her friends and neighbors. And as you will hear, ensuring that their voices are heard is extremely important to her. And we'll also hear from Savannah Medina, who is Cynthia's granddaughter. Savannah was born and raised in the Del Amo community 24 years ago. She has experienced long-term health impacts related to the contamination. She's been an active participant in efforts to educate her community for years and has testified before local, state, and federal government, sharing her story with elected officials, including regulatory and enforcement agencies. She continues to be a true community health champion and inspiration for everyone in her community and beyond. Please join me in a virtual welcome to our panelists. As I said, each of them will have about 13 minutes to share their stories, and then we will have some time as a group for some conversation with our panelists. So I'll go ahead and turn to you, Rebecca.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you all hear me okay out
Yes.
there in Zoom land?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank Robina and Cynthia for the invitation, and also for all the work that they've done this year, putting these conversations together over Zoom. And I mean, this is just something of what they do. And so I wanted to be sure to thank you for continuing this and for highlighting the work that we're doing. So I appreciate that very much. I also want to acknowledge that there are friends in the audience here that I can see, and even my brother has shown up. And so I want to acknowledge Susanna and Maria, of course, friends who have been really supportive over the years, for sure. So I am going to say just a little bit today, really for regulatory staff. I'm thinking this, you are my audience today. And I am speaking as a community member who, works really closely with other community members. And so I'm really a coordinator, as Deldi says. I'm not a president, I'm not a director. I'm just trying to, get the community to work together on these issues. And that's the only way we have a voice. And I think that's really important, just from the get-go, just to say that. So Quemeco, I want to say something a little bit about that. If you don't know what Quemeco is, now that Exide is gone, Quemeco is the last lead smelter standing west of the Rockies. And so it brings in, tons and tons of lead-bearing waste from all over the world, truck and car batteries for the most part, but all kinds of lead-bearing waste that it smelts for clients, right, to make batteries again, new batteries, and for other purposes. And they've been in the community, and the community is City of Industry, sort of Southeast LA County, unincorporated LA County, Hacienda Heights, for many, many years, since 1959, as the facility was first established, and has had different owners. But it's been there doing this smelting for that many decades. And important to keep in mind, from initially the first few decades, of course, entirely unregulated. Like just the emissions coming out of this facility, the stories that neighbors tell, or longtime neighbors tell, of what they have seen and smelled from the beginning from this facility. It's really kind of shocking when you stop and hear it all. So, and it's an ongoing problem. And I can say a little bit more about that, but it's in 2018, just a tidbit, the EPA called it a significant non-complier. I mean, that's putting it mildly. In 2018, the Attorney General of California, on behalf of DTSC, sued the facility for 29 violations of state environmental law, and that's an ongoing open case. And that's just, again, a small taste of what this facility is like. And so the Clean Air Coalition was formed early in the 2000s, I would say, but it's important to just know that this facility early on got the attention of neighbors because of its toxic emissions. So this is like the early 1960s. I have had conversations with longtime neighbors who were here in the late 50s and early 1960s, and they already were smelling, tasting, seeing these emissions coming out of the facility. And early on, actually, we're trying to get the attention of the government and whatever regulators were around at that point to try to reduce or eliminate what they were seeing and smelling. And so one of the things I think it's really important to keep in mind is that these campaigns that community organizations like ours try to initiate and then continue take decades. And literally in our case, it's been decades, and we have some folks second generation are initiating this struggle after their parents and grandparents passed away, and they are continuing the campaign. And and so there's an awareness, I think, that also it's really important to keep in mind that the community has. And so as a result, you get community members who become experts on a particular facility like Comité, but also on the industry, right? The lead smelting industry, the politics of regulation, and the science of toxic emissions, among other things. I think it's just really important to recognize that we become experts with a deep and broad knowledge of the issues that are facing us. We're also, as community members, we're on the ground 24/7 facility monitors, and we're also historians who know the community. So not just the facility, but we know the community. And we mostly, we've seen regulatory officials come and go over the decades. And so, for example, right, folks that I know and I've talked with regularly report, say, odors or emissions or excess noise, including explosions that come from the facility late at night or on weekends when agency staff are not at work. And we know these things are happening out there. We're also grassroots epidemiologists who have seen our neighbors get sick and die of similar diseases over decades of living in the same place. And so one of the main points I want to make today is that we really, as community members, are resources for regulators, and we're not obstacles. And we know things that the regulatory agencies should also want to know. Okay. Now, I know regulatory staff scientists know things too, and we recognize that, and we have had good relationships with conscientious regulatory staff who really, they're digging deep into the data, and they want to know what's going on. But even they don't know everything, right? In fact, we know as community members, we know that regulatory agencies very often rely on models and predictions about pollution and its impacts that are based on really incomplete data, right? So in the case of Comité, just one example, there are 4 fence line monitors. That's it. Then that seems like a good thing, but that's it. They're at the fence line. We have very incomplete sampling of environmental media. We have data that are collected by the polluters themselves. So we are aware of this. There are also some faulty assumptions that are built in to the analysis of these data. So for example, right, the notion that urban background levels of pollution are quote unquote normal, or to cite a historical case, right, 10 micrograms per deciliter of lead in children's blood is safe, which, as of 20 some years ago was accepted truth. So we know that we're understanding better the science of toxicity and its impacts on health. And so we know then that these are sometimes, right, there are really faulty assumptions, or at least maybe they're not, they're at least based on incomplete knowledge. But we are told, right, that we're not exposed to high levels of pollution. And so it's a combination oftentimes of incomplete data, faulty assumptions, but these are the basis then that for telling community members that everything is fine. And then epidemiologists tell us that our sample sizes are too small, that we haven't taken into account a million other variables that impact health, and that we can never really pinpoint the environmental cause of disease. All true, right? We are aware that community reporting is not valued on par with polluter self-reporting. That's another big problem for us, right? We know that that oftentimes it's the facility that investigates itself, and that the polluter then often gets first consideration by agencies and essentially the benefit of the doubt. And all of this makes us very crazy. We get very frustrated, which you've probably heard. And we take it out on the regulatory agencies and their well-meaning staff scientists in our public comments and in public meetings. So what does it all mean? I guess basically the message that I wanted to bring today is that for us as community members, demonstrated humility and open-mindedness and a willingness to listen to new information all goes a really long way towards building trust with impacted communities. And I'm going to give a shout out to Susana Lagudis here and the water boards, because that is the kind of interaction we had with Sam Unger and his staff years ago when we came to them with data that we had collected online. We had seen it of stormwater pollution coming out of this facility. And they took us seriously. And we initiated a process for dealing with that was really productive. And it has created trust that we don't have necessarily with other agencies. So I would say what's most important, though, even above that, humility and open-mindedness and the willingness to listen to new information and to appreciate the fact that community members have knowledge and experience and expertise, is that we really need to see a demonstrated commitment to public health over every other consideration. I mean, it needs to be really demonstrated, not just spoken and not just said and, the mission statements for an agency, but that it's really obvious to us that our public health is above everything else because we live here. So, and that's sort of that really is the bottom line for us. And so I hope I'm not being too preachy, but I wanted to bring, I know that folks in my community would want me to say this, would want me and would want to be heard this way. And I know that this is why a lot of times we sometimes feel like there's no point in doing this work. And of course, that's the last thing that I want anyone to believe, because of course there's a point to all of this. And I will end there. Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you for sharing your perspective and your advice to regulators, reminding us about the importance of public health as the driver for what we do and the value that community members such as yourselves bring to the table. And thank you also for lifting up positive examples where you have seen that happen. And just want to echo your shout out to Susana Lagudis. I've known her for a long time. She is definitely a role model for many of us in the regulatory world. So thank you. I also want to invite folks to feel free to use your Zoom buttons, your reactions. Feel free to post in the chat. We will have dedicated time for Q&A with all of our panelists, but we want to make sure to hear from every single one of them first. So to that end, I'll turn to Felipe Aguirre next in our lineup.
Oh, hi. Thank you for having me this afternoon to be able to tell again the tale of the little city of Maywood, little city that could do things that seemed impossible. Maywood is a small little city, like 1.5 miles, located right on the edge of Vernon, south of Vernon, also next to the I-710 freeway, the East Yards, and the City of Commerce. And in reality, the city of Maywood, very tiny, but it's the entry point from the southeast of Los Angeles County to what was once known as the Alameda Corridor, with a very heavy concentration of labor union jobs. We used to have a company here on the edge of Maywood and Vernon called Bethlehem Steel for many, many years. I remember traveling here 20, 30 years ago. You could see the flames, of the steel foundry coming in from East LA from Boyle Heights. Well, that plant has been gone for quite a while. It was decommissioned maybe like 20 years ago. And with that, we lost a lot of good paying union jobs. Additionally, many other good paying jobs here in the Vernon area have been lost. We used to have US Steel, we used to have Chrysler, we used to have Calcan, and many, many other companies. And I remember Maywood, when I first came into the city, was ringed with a lot of labor unions, steel workers, glass blowers, bakery workers. I said, wow, there's a lot of unions in this town. But in reality, those halls were empty. The workers were no longer there. And the good paying jobs were gone from the Vernon area. And this is in reality what we see now here in this community, that many of the people here in Maywood and in Huntington Park in the Southeast, we see Vernon both as a friend, as a source of jobs, and also as a source of a lot of the problems that we have with contamination. And we have confronted this and seen this situation. We've learned from our partners in the EJ network and from a lot of the regulators that we really had no knowledge that they were there. Many times we had to go to them to find out the information about all the different health problems that were going on in our community. Well, our small little organization was founded here in Maywood in 1997, after we had been involved in organizing a rally in downtown LA in 1996 for full justice for immigrants. And we moved into the community of Maywood November 20th, 1997. We opened up the small organization to work mostly with the tenants, working with immigrants, and assisting people here with all types of little problems, not getting paid their wages on time, so forth and so on. So we were working with the community and seeing a lot of the problems that people were having with their health. Additionally, one of the first issues that we got involved with was the illegal towing of vehicles of the undocumented here in Maywood. There used to be like a site where the Maywood Police Department used to have this as a racket with the city council then, where they would stop anybody that didn't have a driver's license, take away their vehicles, and then sell them back to the people, you know, for a couple of $1,000s. And people were left without vehicles. So we organized the whole campaign. People used to come to our little office and say, you know, they took away my car, I didn't know what to do. We would help them fill out the forms, try to recover their vehicles, go to the city council, ask them to stop this practice. And it was a business that was really, really affecting the community, affecting the businesses. And it really got us into contact with a lot of the environmental problems here in the community, because we could see this as a city of the walking wounded. We would walk and have a lot of campaigns, both organizing tenants and organizing immigrants, and we would see a lot of the health problems, and also additionally the water quality in Maywood, which is really, really bad. But we didn't really get involved in the environmental justice issue until one day we went to a meeting that EPA was having here regarding a place called Pemico that had been closed down and was created into a Superfund site. And this was right on the edge of the city, right on Slauson and Alamo, where there was a company that had been in operation for many, many years, which closed down in the early 90s after this company had dumped all their products, which is basically a lot of solvents that were left over from the defense industry. And this company went up in flames. And we got involved when we went to a meeting. And there's where I met Jane Williams and I met Cynthia Babbage. And they were getting involved in this issue. And I said, boy, this is really incredible. We didn't really know that these problems existed. We know that these companies had been around. They had good jobs. But once they were closed, it was really up to our community to clean them up. And we were cleaning them up with our bodies, with our lungs, you know, and we were not being really told of what the problems were of these companies being left there. And with our first experience working with Pemico, with the Superfund site, was that we found that the agency that was supposed to be resolving the problem of the cleanup of this company was creating systems that we were not in agreement with to how to clean up and get rid of the contaminants that were there. Many of the solvents there were very, very dangerous. A lot of chemicals, benzene, dioxin. And the way that the EPA at that time designed the system to clean it up was they put in a tube and they started burning everything and just throwing it out into the environment. And we said that's not possible. And some of the local homeboys got together and they made sure that that smokestack they put in there didn't exist any longer. And that's how we first got involved in this community. And we quickly became organizing the community regarding the issue of this site, because it was really contaminated, and the way that EPA had designed the system to clean up, they were not really dealing with the issues of vapor intrusion. We had to become experts, in all these different environmental issues, and to be able to translate them and speak to the community in Spanish and tell them what all these problems were. And on the one hand, dealing with the agencies in English, on the other hand, translated to the members of our community in Spanish. And around that time, one of my compatriots and I, Hector Alvarado and I, we started to do an informal health survey, because a lot of people were telling us, they were getting a certain cancer of the stomach, where certain members of the family, quickly, we had one family on 61st and Alamo that 4 of their family members died in a quick succession, about a year and a half. The father, the mother, and the 2 kids passed away. And we sort of went around and said, hey, this is a big problem. How come nobody's doing anything about it? So we went and did an informal survey about 50 households. And we kept asking, the agencies, why is it that there are so many health problems in this area? Respiratory problems, problems with stomach cancers, problems with these issues. And we asked one of the regulatory agencies, the Department of Public Health, why is it that there was no cancer registry or no cancer cluster in this community? So we got a report back from one of the epidemiologists saying that there were no more deaths for cancer in Maywood than there was in the whole county of Los Angeles. And that to us really seemed like, how can you measure a big community like LA County to a smaller community like Maywood? But we didn't really understand, the causality. We didn't really understand the health issues. But we were involved with this Superfund site, Pemico, where we, being involved with an advisory committee, were able to ensure that the cleanup was done in a way that our community could respect it, that in reality, this site was very dangerous, but the agencies had been really dealing with it on their own. And it wasn't until we created this advisory committee, we got more community members involved, that they started to have more briefings, and they sort of started having a little bit of respect for what we were doing. And from the issue of Pemico, we then jumped to another issue, which is really incredible, called Excite, which I'm sure all of you have heard of, and Rebecca knows, the history of what went on with Excite. Took us quite a while, but to get a lot of the regulators involved in it. And it was really incredible that this agency had been given a temporary license for 20 some years. In reality, there was no oversight over the actions of this agency. And we sort of found out from the Steelworkers Union that many of the people that had worked there in the 70s and the 80s had contracted cancer. And there had been a whole campaign here in the early 70s by the Steelworkers Union, which is also located here in Maywood, to educate the community and try to get OSHA involved, in the deaths of many of the workers. And they even made a little video about it, which I posted it. When I found out about it, I met one of the people that used to work there in 1977, 1978. And we found out about Excite again, because of contact with environmental justice folks, people that were working on this issue. But also, additionally, many of our neighbors from Maywood were working at Excite or working next door to Excite, and their vehicles were getting pelted with all this lead that was escaping from the plant. Their cars were coming full of drops, of lead that were falling in their cars. So in reality, it began as a very small little thing. On the one hand, from the people that worked next door to Excite or at Excite itself. And additionally, we were finding out from many of our community activists friends, on the other hand, that this company had been there and what they were doing. And we really became to learn the issue of lead, and knowing that this company still existed, even though they had operated without a permit. And it took a long time, and it took many, many community organizations getting involved with the issue to educate our community about the question of lead. But if we see that the issue of lead has affected our community for many, many years, we have to go back and look at the generations of the children that have grown up in Maywood, Huntington Park, East LA, Boyle Heights. For all those years, we were affected by exposure to lead, both within, the gasoline that was around, the paint. We used to have a company here called Dunn Edwards, right on the edge of Maywood, which used to produce paint for many, many years. Recently, they moved their operations to Arizona, where they still produce the paint. They no longer produce paint here in the area. And again, another very good union paying job, but in reality, they had to, downsize and send some of their plants otherwise, because they were not complying with the law. And as the laws changed, and they started taking lead out of the paint, then, we were able to move on from there. The other thing that we also got involved in this community, I don't know if I'm over my time or not, was the issue of water quality. And that again was another situation that we found out from many of the community meetings, where people would complain about the color of the water that we had. The water really looked pretty gross. It looked like iced tea, or in Spanish, we have a drink called tamarindo, which is brown. And this is the way that the water came from the tap. And to me, it seemed incredible that in one part of our city, people were drinking water from the tap that looked like sewer water, or looked like, something that wasn't really clean. And we contacted the water agency, Maywood Mutual Water Company number 2. They basically tried to blame it on the residents, blame it on the tubing in the houses, blame it on anything except themselves, who were the ones that take the water from the ground and put it into people's houses. So we started learning, about the mutual water companies and how these companies operate. And it was really incredible experience. We got involved in doing our own testing of water, because we had a collection of water bottles at our office that people would collect and say, look, this is the water that I'm drinking. This is the water I'm giving to my kids, and it's not safe. But of course, the water companies and even many of the regulatory agencies said, well, your water is within standards. You're not, the water is not violating the health standards. And we used to tell these companies, well, and the regulatory agencies, it's so good. Here's a bottle of the water that people are drinking. You drink it and see what you think of it. So it's a process of, it was a way of confronting them, but also at the same time, we had to learn as a community organization how to do our own testing to be able to get the agencies involved, the water regulatory agencies, and we had to learn how to collect samples. Cynthia Babbage, remember, helped us out on that process. We collected the samples of the water and we turned it over to the state, and the state got involved in the process to be able to get these 3 mutual water companies that we have to clean up their act. Now, they've operated for a long time in this community. In a small 1 square mile city, you have 3 water companies. And actually, since then, we found out that we actually have 5 little water companies. So it means to me that, there's really no coordination how we deliver water to a small community. And why do we have a need for 3 water agencies? We have 3 buildings, we have 3 staffs, we have 3 boards, but in reality, we don't have a good quality of drinking water. But once the state water agency got involved with us and got involved with the water companies, they started to lay down the law and really force them to clean up their act, which is really good, because if we hadn't really brought attention to the issue of the manganese in Maywood Mutual Water Company number 1, we would have never had the State Water Resources Agency involved in the Department of Drinking Water Quality to come in and force the 3 water companies to do testing and force them to meet with us in a unified manner, which is really good. And this is one of the things that I really think is an example of why we should really adopt the precautionary principle. This is a tale in our community. A small little area, small little city, really representative of what happens in the Southeast, Los Angeles County. Many immigrant communities where the first language is Spanish. Even people, when they become citizens, they keep on speaking Spanish, and it's something that they feel very comfortable with. But in reality, you know, the agencies speak English, the polluters speak English, so we have to be able to translate those things into the Spanish language and to a different experience, and translate what we feel, how we feel, and how we deal with these issues to the agencies, to let them know and sensitize them to the situations that is going on. Sometimes we feel that the agencies are our friends and certain people in the agencies are our friends. And sometimes we feel that the agencies cover up for the companies. And this has been across the board in the water issues, in the issues with Exide, lead, the issue with the cleanup of the contamination, what's going on at Exide. And we've become really, really involved in our community, and we really have turned Maywood into an environmental justice community of activists where people don't take no for an answer any longer. And we sort of look at all these issues and say, you know, why can't our community be treated the same as any other community? Because we're poor, because we don't speak the language. We have the power. We created this community with our labor. We've picked up communities like Vernon, Commerce, the rail yard that's here. We built the freeways like the 710. We built Los Angeles County. You know, we're the ones that create the wealth here. We should get something in return for our contributions, at least a good place to work at, a healthy community, healthy children, healthy families. And that's what we need. And this is our undergirding, what would I say? Thing that drives us.
Felipe.
Yeah, Felipe, that's a great perspective and a really wonderful note to end on as we segue to our third panelist. Again, bringing home that message of public health. Thank you so much for that history reminder. Why don't we turn now to Maria Mejia.
Thank you, Deldi. Good afternoon, everyone. And also, I would like to say thank you to Cynthia and Rabina for putting on this symposium this year and in prior years. And also thank you for all the wonderful and professional work that you do. I'm going to begin by speaking a little bit about the background as to the project on which I worked. I will talk a little bit about the litigation that I was involved with, and then I will talk about some notes for the community and some notes for the agencies. Beginning with the project description and background, this was a project in Shadow Hills. Originally, it consisted of approximately 28 single-family residences and 3 streets. Then it was reduced to 23 and eventually to 21 residences. But my neighbors and I objected to the project because there were a lot of issues with it. We attended hearings, we wrote letters, we took photographs, and submitted written and oral statements to the City of Los Angeles during their administrative hearings. This required us to do a lot of homework, so we didn't just rely on what we were told by the city representatives. We did our own research and tried to find out as much as we could about the project and its significant adverse impacts on the community. There were several issues with this project. Under CEQA and the CEQA guidelines, there are something called an Appendix G, and there are several environmental factors listed there, such as aesthetics, biological resources, traffic, noise, etc. So there are several issues and factors that are listed, and theoretically a government agency and the developers should review these factors when assessing the project. During the proceedings, when one turns in their comments and people submit various documents to the city, that will make up what's referred to as the administrative record generally. My neighbors and I try to get a hold of some documents and files for the project, but some were made available and others were not. We pressed on that issue until the end, and still we did not obtain all the project files that we required and had a right to see. The city had prepared a mitigated negative declaration, or MND, for the project, and my neighbors and I requested that an environmental impact report, that is EIR, be prepared for the project. The city, however, continued with the MND and refused to prepare an EIR. The city's proceedings consisted of several hearings. The hearing started with the Deputy Advisory Agency. They approved the project, so then we appealed to the Area Planning Commission. The Area Planning Commission approved the project, so then we appealed to the City Council. Before the City Council held a hearing, the Plum Committee, which is the Planning and Land Use and Management Committee of the City Council, held a hearing. They voted to approve the project, and that was their recommendation to the full City Council. The City Council then voted to approve the project. There was lots of litigation involved with this project. I had to file the first lawsuit in 2001. The trial court ended up ruling in my favor, and what the trial court judge ruled was that the city failed to give proper notice of its intent to adopt the mitigated negative declaration, that is MND. So the city had to set aside project approval and give proper notice of the hearing and its intent to adopt the MND. After that, we went back to the city, and the city was going to start the city hearings at the City Council level, which was the top, instead of the advisory agency level, which was the beginning. So then I had to go back to court and challenge that with my attorneys and say, this is what the city is trying to do. That's improper. They need to start at the beginning of the process because they have to start over. The court ruled in my favor, so then the city had to start at the Deputy Advisory Agency again. Now, once we went through the proceedings, again, we went through that whole procedure, and the city approved the project at the City Council level. Granted, the city issued 2 new conditions at one hearing and then an additional 10 conditions at a subsequent hearing. But my neighbors and I continue to believe that the project required an EIR as opposed to an MND. And we argued that on several factors, including biological, animal, wildlife, and traffic. So after the city approved the project, I filed another lawsuit, and the trial court ruled in favor of the city and the developers. So it upheld the city decision to approve the project. So then I filed an appeal with the Court of Appeal, and I represented myself in pro per at the Court of Appeal level. I raised several issues during the Court of Appeal proceedings, and the Court of Appeal rendered an opinion in my favor, and I will briefly highlight some of those points. So the court held that the city was required to set aside its project approval and its approval of the MND, and it was required to cause an EIR to be prepared. The court found that substantial evidence existed providing a fair argument that there was significant adverse impacts to animal wildlife. This project had prior versions before I became involved in the late 1990s, and a biological assessment had been prepared for the project site. That assessment identified different types of wildlife on the project site, which corroborated what my neighbors and I were telling the city. My neighbors and I were submitting, for example, photos of quail, cottontail rabbits, there were coyotes, there were bobcats. We didn't have a picture of everything, but a lot of the animal wildlife. And the Court of Appeal found that the biological assessment corroborated what my neighbors and I were saying. And we weren't just saying there's going to be an impact on animal wildlife. We were saying, look, this is what exists. Here are some photos. I've seen eagles, I've seen red-tailed hawks, I've seen cottontail rabbits, I've seen bobcats, I've seen quail, etc. Now, the court also found that there was a fair argument as to traffic. The city's argument and the developer's argument was that they didn't have to do a traffic report because the project consisted of less than 40 homes and the threshold was 40. So because it was under the threshold, they didn't have to do a traffic report. However, my neighbors and I submitted, again, photos and comments showing that the primary street, which was Wheatland Avenue, was very narrow. And on trash days, which were 2 different days, the street became even narrower. This is an equestrian area, so there was a regular trash day, and then there was a trash day for horse trash. So when the trash cans were out on the street, 2 cars could barely pass in either direction. And people, pedestrians, bicycle riders, equestrians used Wheatland Avenue. The court found that we provided, my neighbors and I provided substantial evidence to support a fair argument. So the city was required to do an EIR, even though it was, the number of residences was under the city threshold. Thresholds can be useful in certain instances, but they're not conclusive and they're not dispositive. Another ruling from the Court of Appeal was that the administrative record was incomplete. There's a CEQA guideline that requires documents such as staff reports and other documents to be submitted to the city. Actually, it's Public Resources Code, a public resources code that requires that these documents be part of the administrative record. And the city refused to provide us with all of the administrative record documents, and they failed to include a complete administrative record. So they were required to include the biotic assessment that was previously prepared along with other documents. So that was another part of the court's opinion in my favor. Basically, that's all I have time to say about the case. There were a lot of helpful points and good rulings in that opinion. I, in my heart, felt that the city was wrong, and I based it on fact. I based it on the homework we conducted. I said a lot of prayers. And so my neighbors and I were ecstatic when we got this ruling from the Court of Appeal. Now, some points for the community. What I would like to say is we need to do our homework with respect to projects. So please do your homework. Do not simply rely on the city representatives. Yes, some city representatives or government representatives are helpful, but but the community still needs to do its own homework and needs to rely on itself. That is invaluable. Also, work together as a community. Do not allow the developers and the government agencies to divide and conquer. Together, you are stronger. And CEQA is helpful to communities. CEQA helped me in my situation, and I've seen CEQA help others in other projects and in other situations. It's my understanding that there are certain attorneys that represent developers that are trying to do away and eliminate CEQA. And I say that CEQA is helpful to our communities, and I think it's a ridiculous argument that the developers attorneys present. Now, with respect to the agencies, what I say is that the agencies should ask the developers to reach out to the communities before they proceed with their project approval proceedings. This can go a long way. I also say that government representatives conduct their own independent review as opposed to simply relying on the developers and their attorneys. I also ask that you be fair when reviewing projects. The communities are not asking that you be biased in favor of the communities, but they ask that you be fair. That's all they ask. And lastly, I ask the government representatives when reviewing projects, would you want all of these horrific projects in your community? And I think you would not. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. We really appreciate that inspiring story. I think it's important to lift up as well that when you first began the struggle, you were a paralegal, and then you went on to get your law degree.
Yes, so I was a paralegal at the time. I had been in law school, and eventually I proceeded to take the bar exam and became a licensed attorney. However, when I was a paralegal in different areas. I worked for a major corporation in their in-house legal department and worked on antitrust, securities, and finance issues. I knew nothing about CEQA.
Right.
So I had to start learning about CEQA because of this project that was coming my way, and it was just so unfair. But I do want to emphasize that we all have to do our homework, and if I can do research and learn about CEQA, then people out there in the communities can also do research and learn about CEQA and learn about all the other issues that are going on with a particular project, such as the issues that Rebecca and Felipe mentioned just a few minutes earlier today.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I want to encourage everyone again to go ahead and post your questions in the chat. We already have a couple. In the interest of making sure we hear from our last two panelists, we're going to keep encouraging you to use that. I heard from Rabina and Cynthia that they will make sure to follow up with responses. And let's go ahead and turn to Cynthia Medina and her granddaughter, Savannah Medina. They will share their time, and then we'll use the last minutes that we have for Q&A. Go ahead, Savannah.
Okay. Here we go. Oh God, I am so nervous. All these years of testifying and standing in front of government agencies and just people that make you feel like, small, I just get really nervous. So, but everything I've heard so far is, oh my gosh, is so true about working with communities and going up against 4 or 5 different agencies at the same time, because you realize that they all pertain to the work you're doing, and yet you can't really concentrate on one. You have to concentrate on all, but they don't concentrate on each other. that's all separate. Anyway, in the years that I've been doing this, I've learned a lot. And communities have so much power, they just don't know it. But working in my community, especially alongside Cynthia, has been, oh my gosh, such a wonderful experience sometimes. Very emotional and hard to, I don't know, communicate. But working with the communities is the best. It's wonderful. It empowers you so much just to get them the knowledge and then open up their eyes that these things are happening, because a lot of people in the beginning just didn't realize all the things that were happening and they were affecting us. And I'm going to scatter all over because I don't have nothing written down, but I started because my children were sick, and my son was 9 years old, and I didn't understand, and Cynthia had been going door to door, and so I caught up with her one day and we started talking, and I've been with her the past, I think, 30 years working in our community, and we have done some phenomenal things. We've done things that have never been done before for the first time in our little group. We brought agencies to the table together to work on our issues, and we have gone to all the doors of all the agencies, state, government, local, from Southern California to Northern California. We have been everywhere. We have gone everywhere, trying to get our message across and how important it is for us to push our representatives, push our workers to take care of us. They don't, I don't know how they can do their job and not be communicating with the communities that they work for, because we are the ones that we know what's going on, we know what needs to be done. It's just we don't have the knowledge. Now we have a lot of knowledge, and we hopefully we can use it to better our how do you say, how our surrounding environment, our way of living. So the one thing that has helped us a lot is contacting our representatives and agencies, and I used to be so afraid. I couldn't. It's worse than I am now. I couldn't talk, but now that it's not so hard to knock on their doors and make appointments and talk to them. We do get doors slammed in our faces all the time. We just go and we knock on another door, and we get till somebody listens, and that's how we push our issues across. And all this time we are empowering our communities with our knowledge and our information, and as much as we can, we put it out there for our people to learn and also know what is going on, keeping them informed, giving them the power to the knowledge that they can do the same thing. They can use the power, and through the years we have touched so many lives. So many things have happened. We've had our youth group that was, oh my gosh, so phenomenal. They are now all adults now, and I'm trying to get the energy up to start another one, because I realize how important, because now I have an 11-year-old grandson, and so he's out there with us, and right now he'll do flyers, and that's about, but getting him out there to speak, it is just, oh my gosh, so eye-opening for them to see that they can really do these things. And it comes back around. It's a circle. My kids come back and they call me on the phone and they say, hey, I just got this job And it really helped putting this stuff on my resume. And I said, yeah, it is. And it's just, they couldn't even speak before. Now they can. Now they know that they can, and we know we can. And that's the most important thing, is getting our people together and showing our representatives and our agencies that we care and we're not going to go away. And we have done some, I mean, phenomenal things, but yet we still have a lot more to do. And working with our community gives us the incentive to keep on going, to keep on pushing. I know my family has given me the incentive and the emotion and the how do you say, the support to carry on and continue as much as I can, which isn't as much as before. But there's just no way, there's no way to put into words exactly how this work makes you feel. I can't put it into words. Everything that I've learned working with Cynthia and the Delamo group, and in all the communities, all the environmental groups that we've worked with have all been bettered, and we've been able to advance our projects and make the agencies responsible, listen, protect us. And I think that's the, I don't know, it's the motivation that to keep us going, is that our work is never going to be done, but there's always somebody out there. There's always inspiration, and just calling up somebody and saying, you know, this is going on. And there's so much support in our group, in our little community group, that it's like, I don't know. I mean, look, we're getting a park. Our park's almost done. Just, you know, it was, 18 years of hard work and learning, a big learning process. But our agencies are there to work for us, and we need to push them, and we need to get more people to talk to, make them notice, or make them aware that we care about what happens to us, and we're not going to back down. We're not going to back down. They're there to do we have to make sure that they do their jobs and protect us. And I don't know if that's, I mean, I could go on and on and on. But
yeah, you did find the words. You found the words to express such an inspiring message. And I just want to lift up a comment in the chat about you, so that everybody hears. Cynthia Medina is so modest. This is from Cynthia Babbage. She is a force of goodness and love for her family and neighbors. She is like E.F. Hutton. When she does speak, it is volumes. Give her some love. Thank you, Cynthia, for your story.
all right, Savannah, there you go. Come on.
Can you guys see me?
Yes,
Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
I just want to say thank you guys for allowing me to come on and give you a little aspect of a youth environment perspective. I did start maybe when I was about 6 years old. I remember one day this American lady came to my house to talk to my grandma, and my grandma says, "Oh, you're gonna go with her." And I always told my grandma, "No, I'm not gonna go with her. I don't know who she is." And it was Cynthia Babbage, and Cynthia was like, "Come on, honey, come on." And she's pulling my hand down the street, and I'm just looking at her like, "Oh my God, this lady, where are we going?" And I ended up going back home because I was just like, no, I'm not gonna go with her. I didn't know what she was doing. But then my grandma started, telling me about that she would participate in the Delamo Action Committee, and she kind of told me about all the little gist of things that they would do. And so I started getting involved. I started going door to door, and we would have meetings, and I would, talk to all my people that lived around us, and you know, they would inform me and I would inform them, and it was just like we were kind of like collaborating on, you know, what the problem is. And I never really understood, you know, I was young, I didn't know what environmental justice was, I didn't know what contamination meant, I didn't know none of this stuff. And then I remember we went to a few meetings and we met with EPA, and you know, I kind of just felt like they were just slapping us in the face, like these community people, they think, you know, they're going to put something into our heads. But in reality, it's like we telling them all of our problems, and it's like they go home and they forget about us. You know, nothing was being done. I've always felt very frustrated because I felt it was like worthless. You know, we would go door to door, like my grandma said, and people would close the door on our face. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Nothing's ever going to change. And it's just like, God, can you just listen to me? Like, you know, I felt the same way you felt, but if we all feel that way, nothing's ever going to be done. You know, we have to be on the same place, and we all have to try and get together so they can see that it's not just, oh, 4 people, you know, we need our community. It needs to be everybody. I've suffered a lot of health problems till now, to this day. I was born with asthma. I've had eczema. I lived in California for 23 years, and I just recently moved.
Well, it's going on 2 years. About 2 years ago, she moved to Arkansas. So I lost her.
I couldn't do it. I was tired of going to the ER all the time. Tired of having to use my inhaler. Since I've been in Arkansas, I'm like a whole new person. I still have asthma. I have flare-ups, but I don't have to use my inhaler every day. I came down to visit for the holidays, and since I've been here, I think I used my inhaler maybe like 6-7 times a day. It was just too much for me. But I really learned. I learned a lot. I met so many amazing people that I still talk to on a daily basis. You know, outside of work, it's just like a friendship we've created. I've learned throughout many of the years, if you want your voice heard, you have to speak up. If you do not speak up, nothing's ever going to be done. And I just want to say thank you to the people that do understand where the community comes from, and really, you know, they put themselves in our shoes so they can feel, you know, what we feel, instead of, you know, them being on their higher aspect and just, oh, these people don't know what they're talking about. But take a moment and get into our position and know where we're coming from, the frustration, where we're coming from. We're frustrated. We don't have answers to so many things that are going on. You know, all of my friends, they're all sick. You know, there's women that can't have babies because of so many things, that all this contamination has us all messed up. Okay, I'm done. I'm too emotional. I just want, thank you for having me.
Savannah, thank you for sharing your story. It's very, very powerful. And my heart goes out to the fact that you had to move in order to have a healthier life. And I feel like that's a call to action to all of us, a reminder about just how important our shared mission is. This is about life and death and health. So thank you for being here. And thank you to each and every one of our panelists for your messages today, your challenges, your successes, the call to action to all of us. I want to invite every participant here to go ahead and feel free to use the chat to share any words of appreciation or questions or comments that you might have for any of our panelists.
Deldi.
Yes.
I just wanted to show you some pictures that I have here of our youth group that we had throughout the years. I don't know if you guys can see. I have it on a big poster here.
Yes, we can see.
So this is me here, and I think this is one of our youth members, Lala. And then this is all our group,
Mhm.
some meetings that we had here in the park. Sorry, I tried to put it on the computer, but I couldn't figure it out.
No, we can see it. Thank you for sharing that. And you know, Savannah, I met you years ago when I first came to California and started to work at EPA Region 9, and through Cynthia and Rabina and Jane, we did a toxic tour. And I remember one of our stops and meeting the youth group. I'm sure you were there and were part of that.
Yes, yes, I was.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everyone. I appreciate your comments in the chat. I think at this point, I will turn it back over to our organizers.
Thank you, Deldi. I'm gonna be doing the closing. I know we're right about time. I have to pull myself together because my love for my community is great. And losing the next generation is really hard. And we're really lucky Savannah can present with us today along with her grandma. So I just want to let people know that, you know, we really want to thank you for your interest in our EJ symposiums. And, you know, they take a lot of hours of preparation, and it's not only Robina and my time, but a lot of our agency partners have put a lot of time into it. They are supported often by their agencies. This year, we had a total of 22 planning meetings that started last November. And we had initial 12 hot topics that we wanted to present, and it was really hard to narrow it down to 8. Unanimously, we wanted to end with community stories as our final for this year's series. And I just, you know, want to say that the resources for the LAEJ Network's projects and some of the events that we do are very scarce. We do appreciate our sponsors very much. It's given us the ability, especially this year, to provide translations and also stipends to community members. And it does pay for a portion of Robina and my time pulling things together. So if you know of resources or you have resources to share, the Del Amo Action Committee is the fiscal sponsor for the LAEJ network. We will have accountability and use them wisely. And if you have projects that you'd like to share with us that maybe you'd like some help on, you know, I really want to offer that up to you. And I just want to especially say, you know, thank you for listening and sharing this space with us. And it's really important because often we feel very invisible. And thank you for seeing us. And I'm going to briefly turn it over to Robina because she is the most amazing person on making sure that people get thanked properly. And I hope that she can just jump on here and give the accolades to everybody who needs it. I know we mentioned our planning committee early on, but I just can't tell you how these folks are like family to us. We take the time to build the relationships with those we see in the agency that are trying to uplift their own colleagues and also hear us. And building those relationships often is the key to success. And so, Robina, if you could just say a couple. Thank you.
First of all, happy and healthy holidays to everyone. Thank you to all of the attendees, to our incredible translators, Leah and Nicola, and to our absolutely phenomenal moderator and panelists who were with us today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We welcome your questions. Please don't hesitate. We can stay on, at least on the chat. Any questions you may have, feel free to put them in the chat and include, if we don't have it, your email address, and we'll make sure that they're responded to right away. Just thank you so very much, and all the best to all of you, and especially in 2022. Thank you again. Good evening.